Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Chelsea Echo and welcome to your match preview of Chelsea versus Manchester United, the last Premier League home game of the season. It is myself, Louis Beneventi.
It's myself, Daniel Childs.
And we are here to give you everything you need to know about what is bound to be one of the most spectacular games you have ever seen, with Manchester United being at an all-time low and Chelsea seemingly doing okay now. But obviously we need to talk a little bit about Newcastle, just a little bit. And of course, both in European finals, which I still, by the way, can't fathom how Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur are European finalists. With the seasons that they've had, either of them could be in the Champions League. It makes you feel a bit sorry for like Aston Villa and stuff, but I digress. That's a whole pod in itself, I believe, Dan, with people obviously support those clubs. We're going to need to talk to them at some point, maybe, but who knows? Maybe there's something in the works, maybe there's not. But most importantly, Dan, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. Did you get invited to the Damac launch at Stamford Bridge and not tell me?
Hang on, let me just check my my post. No, unfortunately, I can't. It hasn't come in the post yet. Unfortunately, I'm just checking these drawers where I put my post. Hang on. No, there's a Harry Potter ticket in here.
Oh.
No, I don't. Louis, did you get the invite? I'm sorry. I'm just looking through my desk here. I can't find an invite.
What's it? I've got a bill from EE which I need to sort out. I've got my driver's license renewal form. I've got my other notes. I've got 3 notebooks on my desk. I've got my sticky. I think that's a sticky pad there. Oh, here. Wait, hang on. Here it is. I found it. It's right here. Sorry, it's right here. Is that? I don't know. Is that plausible? Can you see that? It's literally. It's. Oh no! Wait. It's a fucking sticky note. We didn't get invited, did we?
I thought you were going to bring out the brown envelope in it.
Can I be honest? I was looking to see if I actually had a brown envelope somewhere.
Sadly, I don't anywhere. Do they even do you don't really get I guess you could argue Amazon is the closest you could get to that now. You get your Amazon parcels, but I don't. All the letters I get are like the white.
Wait, hang on. I do.
There we go.
Because of my driver's license renewal, it comes in a brown envelope.
Proof you've been exposed as the grifter that we all know that you really are.
Oh no, really? Is that somebody else accusing me of something which is completely false of being a grifter? Wow, that's amazing. No, but as you can tell, me and Dad didn't get invited to the Damac launch. Everyone was talking about how amazing
honestly, I had no idea until you brought it up before we started recording. I had no idea there was even an event. I had literally there was nothing. I had no idea there was anything. So yeah, it was funny to do that bit, but thanks, but no thanks to the event that I wouldn't have gone to anyway. But you know,
mate, listen, I'll be very honest. I'd have gone for the canapes. Just it's free dinner. I'm not going to say no to that. Got to think smart, mate. Think smart. Work smart, not hard. That's what I say. But also, it's worth saying, because obviously people, we didn't mention it last week because we weren't sure it was actually going to be able to happen. But if you are on Spotify, you are actually watching me and Dan do the podcast. So hello to everyone on Spotify. As you can tell, we did have some issues with our provider, and we're still trying to deal with that. So if you're on Apple and you all of a sudden are listening to this because you've got 5 episodes that you didn't even realize existed, we do apologize. But they are going to be coming into the Apple feed hopefully today.
It's like a gift, it's like when you get presents that you don't expect, like when you get an envelope in the post that you don't expect. And when a new series of something drops and you've got 5 episodes there to watch, you've got. Oh, I have to say, Louis, quickly, I was forced by my fiance last night to start watching Married to the Game. Have you heard of this? Married to the Game.
Is this the one where James Tarkovsky and his missus just bang on about how much they love shagging?
Well, no, because but that's not the series. She'd never watched it before, so she just clicked onto the series because now it's got Cucurella on it.
Right.
And I mean, I have to say, I can, and maybe it's just like relationship stuff. Like I've had to adjust. Like if you'd have told 2022, 2021 Dan that he'd have gone to a Taylor Swift concert, he'd found a series of the Kardashians enjoyable, and had to start watching a lot of reality TV. I think I dread to think what the reaction would have been of 2022 Dan.
Dan,
Well,
I remember 2023 Dan struggling with talking to women full stop. So it's quite spectacular that
I remember 2025 Dan struggling to do anything. But this was a series that I assume this is the most recent series because it kicks off last summer with the Euros. Now, my big problem with this, right, is that, to be fair, Cucurella actually comes out of it, from what I've seen, the best. Like, a lot of it just makes me not like football that much. It kind of is like, this is just really, really... Like, the thing is with the Kardashians is, sure, it's like rich wealth being, like, shoved in your face on a consistent basis. Like, thinking about it, it was a double bill of this because she also wanted to watch the new Molly May series. And all I could think about whilst watching it was just the Molly May Stephen Bartlett episode a few years ago when she said, Beyonce's got 24 hours as well. That's all I could think. So that was show me some sympathy, Louis. I couldn't go. No one cared to give me an invite to the Damac event, so I had to watch Molly May and Married to the Game. That is now my Tuesday nights.
I was watching the playoffs, to be honest. So Dan, this is basically Dan saying, "Don't get married, guys." I think so. Hopefully, if Nick is watching,
she isn't.
We do apologise. Can't believe Nick's not subscribed to the Chelsea Echo podcast.
She told me the other day that like she hasn't listened to anything, and I said yeah, because what she does for my YouTube videos, she clicks onto it so it registers as a view, likes the video, and then doesn't watch the rest. So
I mean, it's
for
better
analytics.
Than what my girlfriends did.
For analytics, it's all right, I guess.
No, it is. It's better. Listen, my girlfriends just told me to stop recording stupid YouTube videos. So, there is that. So, fair play. Thank you, Nick. But I mean, I will say on that Married to the Game thing, as much as I made the joke about James Tarkowski and his missus, which was a very funny bit, I did see the clip of Cucurella talking about his kid who had autism and how they dealt with it. And I thought that was really good. And obviously it does, as much as I hate reality TV pretty much, unless it's Sunderland Till I Die. I really think that, like you said, he came out really well in it, and it obviously showcased the human side of him a bit more as well. And then you had Riyad Mahrez talking about how he was having a third wedding and he was just paying for it with his,
they loved Riyad Mahrez's. Well, I guess it is his wife because they were talking about third weddings. She was having like the whole narrative of the first episode was her having like the biggest conflict of this show in the first episode was her having a breast reduction and us having to feel really sorry for her about this. They just keep on going back to her, and I was
that's a crime against humanity. Why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah, and I just turned to Nick and I was like, and she was like, "Are you enjoying it?" And I said nothing.
For those that don't know Dan, that is Dan's way of saying no. This is so ridiculous and pointless. To which at some point, I'm sure when we're having a conversation in this episode, you will notice a brief pause. That'll be Dan, if you're listening, just staring me in the face disapprovingly. But we probably should move on because, Damac didn't invite us. So, it's what it is. Game's a game. And obviously we should talk a little bit about Chelsea versus Manchester United. But before we do that, ladies and gentlemen, it is the most important part of the show, the best part of the Chelsea Echo. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the only part that you care about. This is the Donk Report.
We're going to see how much of a mess this is with the first bit of the Donk Report that they provided us this week. But here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Donk Report time. Nicholas Jackson has apologised to his Chelsea teammates after getting sent off at Newcastle. Instead, he's come up with new lyrics to his favourite Outcast song. I'm sorry, I'm Jackson. Ooh, I got a red. Never meant to make Maresca cry. I apologise for the elbow fly.
Man City are already preparing for Christmas despite it being May. David Ornstein reports that they're going for a reindeer. That's good, reindeer. As Pep Guardiola looks to make up for a poor 24-25 campaign. Best get ahead of Black Friday.
Chelsea's new kit launches on Friday. Whilst this season's design took inspiration from a bus seat, 2025 brings the visual representation of what would happen if you threw a good shirt design on the street and it got run over by a bus. I can't wait for 2026, to be fair, when the shirt represents being put in an ambulance.
Tom Cruise has been promoting the final Mission Impossible, standing on top of the BFI IMAX. In the new film, Final Reckoning, Ethan Hunt faces his toughest mission yet, getting past the virtual waiting room and securing a ticket for Roadclaw. Bosh, that is a Donk Report. Well timed, Daniel Childs. That was spectacular.
We got to give credit to, no, of course, the Donk Report team. We always got to give them praise. The Donk Report team, actually, after their union strike a few weeks ago, actually did go to the Damac event themselves. I don't know how the Donk Report team got to go to the Damac event, but we didn't. But that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly got lost our invitations in the post. That give me all these brown envelopes, and you don't even give me a ticket to your Damac event. You know what I mean? I do think we should actually, before we move on to the actual preview, we do need to talk about Damac a little bit more, because Chelsea obviously are looking to release their brand new shirt, right? And I don't hate it. After everything me and you have discussed about shirts this season, I actually don't hate this shirt too much. I do want to kind of look at it up close and personal, because I'm a bit worried about the sublimations being a little bit too much like the 1920 shirt. But from what I've seen so far, I'm actually quite a fan. I even, despite a lot of people's protestations, I even like the socks. I know Chelsea stuff's supposed to be white, but I like the socks as well. But I mean, if you're just looking at that shirt, right, it's not terrible. It's really not terrible at all.
For those watching, you can, I've just put it up on screen now. And yeah, it's like it's not awful. It's actually grown on me a bit more than when I first kind of saw it. But yeah, I always say there's a 3-stage process to the kit nowadays. The first stage is all the leaks that come out from Footy Headlines months in advance. And I always give credit to Footy Headlines, because they have an incredible record. Like, they are spot on every single year. You know what the kit looks like months in advance. And maybe that, like, I do miss the nostalgia when I was like same age, right? So like, I remember the year when Chelsea moved from Umbro to Adidas. And for months, like, what the hell is a Chelsea Adidas kit going to look like? And there was like all these, and you had no idea what this kit was going to look like, because Footy Headlines wasn't around, social media wasn't a thing. So it really was a shock when the kit launched, because you had no idea what it would look like. Obviously, nowadays we get to see it months in advance. So obviously you get the templates, you get the designs, and then slowly but surely you get the real version. And I always think that, that's the sort of the second phase, is then making a judgment on that. But the third is obviously seeing it in person, because there have been kits throughout the years that I was actually a little bit negative on, and I actually see it physically in person and then see it on the players and actually like it a lot more. This season's kit is one where I hated it all through the phases. Literally, my hate for it went up through the phases. And I put on my X earlier a comparison, literally a side-by-side shot that Footy Headlines did of this season's kit versus the new one that's about to be launched, and you just realize how atrocious it is. So it's I have to say, this kit is pretty good, and I think the retro third kit that's going to be is going to sell out. That kit is going to sell out.
Oh, I'm all over that shirt. Like that is Nike, actually. I think, looking at what Adidas have done, I've gone, you know what, that works. Let's go for that, because it obviously contradicts what you and I were discussing a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about kits, which was, we don't think nostalgia would sell as well. I think that's going to fly off the shelf, and that is the first Chelsea shirt in about when was it? The last shirt I actually bought was 14-15. I've not bought a Chelsea shirt since then. I've had shirts gifted to me, but I've never bought one. I'd go out and buy that shirt. And I think that'll be spectacular. The away shirt as well, the white with the red and green, is really good as well. And that does go back to what we were saying a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about history, and people going on Twitter and saying, Chelsea have never had red on their shirts. What are you talking about? And then you actually go, well, actually, lads, here you go. So I'm very excited to see that. I think it's going to be a really interesting year for Chelsea kits, and obviously the pre-match shirt as well looks great. And they're launching it on Friday. So obviously we're recording this on Wednesday. You listen to this hopefully on Thursday, or if not, if you listen to it on Friday, you will have seen the kit be officially launched by Chelsea. However, Dan and I have done a little bit of digging. So, Dan, do you remember a couple of weeks ago when I said, I don't know why they're doing this Damac sponsorship, because this is when you start seeing the new shirts come out and everything gets leaked. And it's towards the end of the season, you actually see those kits getting worn, right? So Chelsea are going to be in a big European final. I know it's not big to a lot of people, but Chelsea are going to Poland to play in the final. You think maybe they'll wear their new shirt. Final game of the season at home. You think maybe they're going to wear their new shirt. Dan, what was it that you found out the other day?
Well, as I say, we'll have to wait and see, and it may be reported by the time you're listening to this, but the belief is that Chelsea will not be able to wear their new shirt that they're going to launch on Friday against Man United because of the deal they've done with the Mac, which means they have to wear their old shirt. Well, this season's shirt. It's not an old shirt. It's this season's shirt. But yeah, they're not able, because you'd assume, right, that logically you launched a kit and then you want, surely the players would wear it. I just don't understand.
Standard marketing.
Well, it's like marketing 101. Like I just kind of, I didn't really understand. So yeah, apparently because they've tied themselves into this deal with the Mac, they probably won't be able to wear this new shirt until at least the start of the Club World Cup next month. Which I've been told before that the Club World Cup was when they could wear it.
Can you imagine, right? For the sake of 7 games of football, 7 games of football, you're going to hinder yourself and your marketing potential for when you could have actually secured a sponsor for when the new shirt gets released to go into the Club World Cup, into the season beyond. Can you imagine how stupid that is for a club that, wasn't very well run from a marketing standpoint, from a football standpoint, from a business standpoint? This isn't a terribly good marketing, business or football move in my eyes. I don't know about you, Dan.
Well, this is the thing I keep on going. Like, this isn't the end of the world, right? Like, it's very small in the context. It's funny, right? It's just it's a little bit funny that they launched their new kit and they can't wear it apparently on the game of the night of the morning you launched that new kit. It just kind of feels like one of those things where it's like Curb Your Enthusiasm music starts to play. However, like it's going to be I'm lost track now, third or fourth season in a row where they're going to launch a new kit with no sponsor on it. And to me, like, that's just, it just can't happen. Like, it's not, when people try and, spin it and kind of claim that, well, people still blaming the Paramount deal from the summer of 23. I was like, guys, we're basically nearly 2 years away from that thing happening and the Premier League rejecting that Paramount sponsor. You do realize that was 2 years ago now. The idea that you've gone into this never happened under the previous ownership. This doesn't happen for a majority of clubs in the Premier League. Like, this just doesn't happen. Like, you have your sponsorship tied down. When you launch a new kit, that sponsor that you've had, either pre-existing or a new one, will be on the front of the shirt. Yeah. Why does this keep happening? It's not a Barcelona. This is not, even though I like it because I like having shirts with no sponsor on, because it's a little bit of, a rejection of just having sponsorship all the time on and everything regarding football. But it's not by design. This is clearly not, we're rallying against the culture and we're creating a shirt that, is minimalist and, is really about the badge, and really about Chelsea. It's not a Barcelona type situation from years ago. This is clearly a failure of just getting a sponsor over the line. And that's the insane thing. So yeah, it's, I'm curious to see that period when, because the shirt's clearly, this is, to be fair to them, this is the earliest they've released a shirt, because the last two at least have been June or July. They're getting out early, but they're clearly, unless the Mac sort something out with the Mac very, very quickly to go on to that new shirt. I'm not entirely sure how quickly it works, but there is at least going to be a period when you can buy that shirt with no sponsor on it again, which I think most people will probably go for. But from a, we're a sponsor, we're an ownership that is great at sponsorship and commercial opportunities, it again reflects the distance from actual objective reality. You're not like that. That makes no sense. And to be fair, the Damac era has been pretty positive, even though it's lasted. It's only going to last about a month. But I think that the kit itself, to be fair, is a lot better in design.
Yeah.
But the shenanigans around it is in some ways so indicative of kind of the Clear Lake of it all. Very
For
Clear
me,
Lakean. Do people say Trumpian, Clear Lakean? I think we can call it.
yeah, I think we'll say it's Clear Lakean now. I think that's a good one. With that, that's like you think, right? These guys run hedge funds, or if you're Todd Bowley, own a movie studio. If I'm being smart right now, right? If I'm trying to find a sponsor straight off the bat, you'd think, well, let's promote one of our own projects just to put on there quickly, which means that we still get a return because it's going in front of something. It's little basic things like that. I mean, is it A24 that Todd Bowley has a stake in? So
yeah, 18.4.
The largest independent film company in the world, producing some of the best films of the past 3 or 4 years, especially, right? If it had A24 on the front, I'd be all over. I think it looks sick. But then also, it's opportunity to, I don't know, talk about the films. A bit like what, do you remember Atletico Madrid years ago?
Yeah, Spider-Man 2.
Yeah,
Spider-Man 2.
that was a shirt. So I'm in my shirt era at the minute, Dan, because a bit of personal news. We're actually redesigning the Imperial Wolf shirts, so we're getting some new shirts, mate.
I wore my Imperial Wolf shirt to my run on Saturday, and I've been wearing it. I've worn it about a bit. I think I even wore it on a Chelsea video. I'm pretty sure recently. Maybe it was a preview for Newcastle, but yeah, I don't really understand. Like, I'd be well up for even like movies that are coming out over the summer, like a Fantastic Four, a Superman. You know, do something like that. That'd be quite memorable.
That'd be a lot of fun, and it leads into they'd sell absolutely. And I see, I've got my mind set on an A24 shirt now. I think, look, maybe they listen to the pod. Maybe they'll get us in for our marketing expertise. Who knows? Because clearly we're more intelligent and more forward thinking and more business savvy than the people who are actually in those departments. So, you know, you don't like it, guys, but it's a fact. But speaking of that, we should do a little bit of marketing ourselves. So if you are listening to the pod on Spotify or watching it on Spotify and you're enjoying it and you're new, give us a 5-star review. Would really help out the pod. And obviously, we are the fastest growing Chelsea community on the internet. So make sure you get involved with that on all our socials as well. Obviously, the Chelsea Echo on X is probably our big one, which we're doing quite well with at the minute. Having a lot of fun with that. And of course, follow mine and Dan's. I'm doing it again. I keep pointing the wrong way. Mine and Dan's socials as well, because we're doing that wrong way, other way.
No, I am doing it. I swear I am doing it the right way.
No, you're not. You're doing it the wrong way. Other way. No, other way. Put your hands the other way. There we go. We're going to be.
I don't know how. Yeah, but I don't know. Is my screen on StreamYard? Like, I thought the screen I'm looking at on StreamYard, because I'm like that's the screen that's going to come out when we're doing the show. So I think I am going the right way. I'd love if you're listening to this on audio. It's an absolute clusterfuck. Like, you know, like you have no idea what we're doing.
No, but that's why we love this podcast.
Terrible
that's why
radio.
We enjoy doing it. It is terrible radio. So we'll probably move swiftly on after doing our awful marketing, after saying we would get better at it than the people at Chelsea, which is a bit worrying. We should probably talk a little bit about Chelsea versus Manchester United, a game where even when Manchester United have been poor over the past 5-6 years, you'd be worried that they're going to show up and do the business. I actually am not scared of playing Manchester United at all, which is probably a great excuse for that to be clipped out and the curb your enthusiasm, like you were saying earlier, would start playing when we undoubtedly probably lose 17-0. But I'm not particularly worried about playing Manchester United at the minute. I don't see a side which are any good at all. If it wasn't for PSR, I think we'd genuinely be seeing a team which are in a relegation scrap with Spurs, which would be insane, by the way. I am really, really, really certain that Chelsea are going to win on Friday night, but then also again, I think Chelsea are going to win convincingly, and I'm never positive, and I never think Chelsea are going to win any game. Like I just simply cannot see Chelsea losing this.
On form of this season, you would say, yeah. Like on recent form in the Premier League, Man United and Spurs look like they can't be asked to play any Premier League games, and because they only care about the Europa League final. So both teams have kind of put everything in there. There's a suspicion that the team that plays on Friday night for Man United will be rotated because Ruben Amorim, as you probably suspect, will want to rest the key players, the big players. Why would you risk Bruno Fernandes, who could pull up with something a few days before the biggest game you've had in years, like the one chance of salvation, the chance to get into the Champions League? Like, so in that sense, that benefits Chelsea, right? My concern with this game is not United showing up. My concern with this game, as it has been against Man United for a long time now, is Chelsea lowering themselves to the level of Man United. That, to me, it is always the concern in these games, because it always seems to me, no matter how bad Man United are, no matter how devoid of confidence and quality they are, Chelsea still manage to make the game a scrap. And the best version of Chelsea doesn't show up. And that's my big frustration, because you feel like there's an opportunity, because the name of Man United is still big. It's still like, I mean, maybe it's an age thing. Like, you know, we grew up watching Chelsea and Man United battle for Premier League titles. They are still one of the biggest clubs in the world. Like, I know they're having a terrible year this year, but, you know, but then there's a dual kind of thing there where you're like, yeah, it's short. It's big to beat Man United, and you want to beat Man United for a rivalry point of view, but then you don't want the players to look at that shirt and that opposing team and feel like, and be overawed by it. Like, you know, the team in front of you, the form in front of you tells you a team that should not be taken seriously in kind of a condescending way, but, you know, you should be going for their throats. There is an opportunity here for a big win, to put down a marker and to put ourselves in a position where we're 3 points away from Champions League football. So I think it's that, again, that psychological element. Like, I know we spoke about the Liverpool game, we spoke about, you know, the Newcastle game, and I think the great disappointment for me coming out of the Newcastle game is that, you know, you watch the start we had against Liverpool. You look at the mindset that was there for that Liverpool game, a big game, a big occasion when we needed to get those 3 points, and the team rallied themselves and, you know, worked for each other off the ball. The mindset at the start of that Newcastle game was the complete opposite. Like, I thought the game started so terribly. We did not look prepared for it at all. So yeah, again, it's that mindset, right, of going into these final 2 Premier League games that are defining for Chelsea's season. Like, what Chelsea are we going to get? Are we going to get the Chelsea against Liverpool? Are we going to get the Chelsea that managed to rally themselves to turn around that Fulham game and keep the season alive? Or are we going to see the Chelsea that unfortunately has kind of been there mostly in terms of average level of performance since mid-December? So that is the huge question. But on form, yeah, if Chelsea can't beat this Man United team, let me make this abundantly clear: historical record, the history of the team, the size of the team you're playing. If Chelsea can't beat Man United on Friday, don't deserve to be in the Champions League. You make that pretty clear. Like, you know, if you cannot beat this team that, you know, has lost to West Ham at home pretty convincingly at the weekend. West Ham have had so many problems this season as well. Another team that has looked checked out but managed to get inspiration at Old Trafford. This is a game where Chelsea should be burying it. They should be getting back to some form and confidence, and then hopefully, you never know what happens in the rest of the weekend games, right? And I believe Villa and Spurs are playing on the same night. And we may have an inkling, because I think they kick off before us, because we have the 8:15 kickoff. I think Villa and Spurs kick off before. But you can imagine a scenario, and I know, and listen, relying on Spurs to do anything is a fool's game. It's just from like a football thing of what we've seen in recent weeks of teams dropping points unexpectedly. You imagine a scenario where Villa somehow fail to beat Spurs. Suddenly you're in a position where Chelsea psychologically can put themselves literally on the brink, because we're at this stage of the season, any slip is fatal. And particularly because Chelsea have that goal difference advantage, that basically accounts as an extra point in the race for Champions League. So I just hope the team is ready. But I agree with you about confidence. The other confident thing is our form at Stamford Bridge has been pretty good for quite a while now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you think about the big night games at Stamford Bridge or the big games at Stamford Bridge. I mean, games that have been the crowd are always ready for, and that's Spurs at home, Liverpool at home, Man United at home. You know, games that no matter where those teams are on the Premier League table, you're always going to get a level of atmosphere that you just aren't for Ipswich at home, for instance. I think the team has performed and kind of stepped up to those games in the right way. So that's kind of also a feeling that under the lights on a Friday night, an evening, a summer evening, I think everyone will be kind of in a good mood and want to see the team do well. That is also why you think Chelsea should be able to win this game and hopefully make it a positive night.
Absolutely. And just to answer your question, by the way, Villa kick off 45 minutes before us against Spurs. So we'll probably have an inkling of what the score is going to be by the time our game starts, because I've got a funny feeling with it being at Villa Park, it's going to be a bit of a hammering. But with all that being said, yeah, no, I agree. I think our home form's been pretty good. Completely different to our away form, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. I saw a stat the other day or yesterday, which we put out where Chelsea have actually won only one game in the Premier League away from home since December. Spurs and Manchester United have won more games, and that's away from home. So there is that, which could work against us, but who knows? I'd like to think that Chelsea are going to be up for it, and I agree with you that if they don't deliver, then realistically, yeah, this is not a team that deserves Champions League. There has been rumbling as well coming out of Stamford Bridge this week, where if, and I'd hope it's a big if, Enzo Maresca fails to win the Conference League final or finish in the top 5, that he is going to be reviewed, because apparently some of the board members aren't very happy with him. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that develops, because again, it's Chelsea and their briefs coming out in loads of different ways and changing and flip-flopping over and over and over and over, and it just makes no sense. But we'll have to see what happens with that as time develops. But yeah, Chelsea need to get the result today against Manchester United. Should they fail, it's going to be a very, very awkward, I think, week for Chelsea, because realistically, I think, look, I'm worried about the trip to Nottingham Forest, and I'm worried about other teams picking up points around us, especially with some of the fixtures that they've got. I think the only team which I think could do us a favour, funnily enough, could be Arsenal. So if that is something, then Christ, that is something we've got to rely on.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure Forest, in their current state, you can be that sure are going to go to West Ham and win.
I'm not sure, but I'm more convinced that they will than they won't. I think, especially with all the stuff that's happening with O&E as well. And by the way, thoughts go out to him, because that was, a horrible thing to see, and it's horrible to see what's happening to him. I've got a funny feeling that's going to rally them. I think, having one of your teammates in an induced coma, you're on the way to Champions League football potentially. That's going to be somewhere that based on how they're operating as a club and what we've actually now heard since the owner of Nottingham Forest stormed onto the pitch. We now know why he did that. It was because of what happened to O&E. They were talking about that. They were worried about him. And granted, it probably could have been handled better. I think we can all agree that. But you can see that as a club, that he is an owner who really cares, and I can see them rallying around him to get the result at West Ham, and then of course potentially getting a result against us. And look, if Chelsea don't beat Manchester United and don't beat Nottingham Forest, realistically that is Champions League down the pan. And the fact that Manchester United or Spurs could get it and we couldn't, that is absolutely shocking. So we'll just have to see what happens with that. But look, we should probably move on, because obviously we do have other bits of news to talk about, but we're going to go back to our old methodology, as we did at the beginning of the season, which is fitting it around the Echo 11. Now, Dan, our big talking points are obviously up front, on the wings. There's lots of transfer news circulating, and obviously things we need to talk about in regards to a certain Nicholas Jackson. So you're going to have to wait and hang about for that if you want to hear all that stuff about Nicholas Jackson, because we do the strikers at the end, unfortunately, guys. We're going to start at the back, and obviously it does tie in with us looking back towards the Newcastle game as well. Robert Sanchez, I'm guessing, starts the goal. I mean, he didn't do anything terrible, but he was. Meh. I think, goalkeeper is definitely a position which needs to be targeted in the summer. Obviously, we've got some other stuff to talk about in terms of news here at the back. Now, in terms of Chelsea centre backs, it will be Trevor Chalobah and it will be Levi Colwill. I think that's a given now, and I think that is Chelsea's settled pairing until the end of the season. Trev has now been doing it consistently for years. Still probably going to be sold in the summer. Makes no sense. But hey, me and Dan have said our piece on that so many times, and you know where we all stand in regards to Trevor Chalobah, a player with unbelievable caliber, a great leader within the squad. And it was great to see him wearing the armband at Stamford Bridge when he came on against it wasn't the Liverpool game.
Gordon.
What am I talking about? It was Jurgen, that was it. I had a brain fart then. Against Jurgen, wearing the armband, spectacular to see. But we probably should talk a little bit about the centre backs because friend of the pod, Simon Phillips, obviously has posted some news, but also we have another friend of the pod who has been looking at it, which is Nizar Kinsella. Now, I've got his article up in front of me in regards to Chelsea's transfer dealings. And of course, the big name that's come up at centre-back is Dean Huijsen. Now, Chelsea have been apparent front runners for Dean Huijsen for an extended period of time. He's been somebody which the club have been reviewing for an extended period of time. However, we are likely to lose out to Dean Huijsen to either Barcelona or Real Madrid. Now, I'm not going to do a Liverpool fan and say, oh my God, I can't believe he's choosing them over us. There are rivals. Barcelona are Chelsea's rivals. No, they're not. It's Barcelona. It's Real Madrid. If we lose out to them, I'm actually not that bothered. It's fair enough. It's one of those. But Chelsea are open looking at other options as well. And a big one, which they are looking at, is obviously Mark Gahey. Because guess what, guys? Apparently, they've realised there's a lack of experience in the squad. Oh my God. What? Really? Dan, can you believe it?
I have to say, I with 17-hour work days, I can't believe such an oversight has come about. I mean, who could have predicted this? No one could have anticipated this being a problem in the squad. I mean, what were they supposed to do? How could they have avoided this? I have no idea.
Oh, it's almost like they probably should have done it ages ago. I mean, they have said that it's something that, my favorite quote, let me quickly find it for you, right? Because my computer's been a bit slow, I'll get up on my phone. It was from Naz's article, right? And Sai pointed it out. And it was something where it's very Clear Lakean what was being said, right?
Clear Lakean.
So, we obviously we put it out on the Chelsea Echo, where, according to Naz, that there is an acceptance within Chelsea that the squad lacks natural leaders. Now, we've all said that for years, right? But then they followed up with this. Although Chelsea have trended towards younger signings, older players at a world-class level with potential to add to the squad in other ways will also be considered. If you know Clear Lake, you know what that means? It means they ain't going to be considered because they're over 25. It means, guys, we looked at them, but they don't fit our model, so we're not going to do it. It's like, yeah, but your model doesn't make any bloody sense. It's like,
it's like the Virgil van Dijk story a few weeks ago that people were propping up as like evidence, and it's like rightly people were cynical about it because it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, sure, you can say you're interested, you could brief that you're interested, but did you ever get into a room with Virgil van Dijk in a serious way? No. So like, we never got. There was no ever like. It's like when what do you call it? Sydney Sweeney said she was single a few weeks ago. Like, everyone goes, all the single guys go.
Is that a personal attack after me trying to slide Sydney's DMs?
No, I'm not. It's no attacks here. No attacks here.
I've got a chance. It's something which we just need to offer the right wage structure and the right sort of deal. And sorry, am I still talking about Sydney Sweeney? Am I talking about Chelsea transfer policy here? Sorry, it's just
it does get confused sometimes. But I just want to go back to that. Like, I think that fundamentally, if you're not doing it seriously, if when it actually matters, like when you actually get into a room with these players, whether it's Victor Osimhen a year ago, whether it's even younger players like Michael Elise, and you're not willing to offer the serious money, it doesn't matter because I don't care about the players we don't sign. That doesn't come into you talk about players. Oh, we could have signed this one. It's the Wenger thing from years ago. Look at the team I could have constructed, and then you're left. Arsenal fans are left there watching Laurent Koscielny. There is for me a big problem at the moment of the reality of what you're actually executing versus what could have happened. And on the Dean Huijsen, I don't mind him not moving to Chelsea because I don't think that's the profile of player we actually need in central defence. Because I look at Dean Huijsen, obviously he's had a really promising season at Bournemouth, has done really well, and it's clear potential, there's clear quality there. But it's not like we don't have young defenders within our midst who either could become that or are already kind of at that level anyway. And if you just put the right players around them, they can even go to another level. It's more like, can we get an older player? I've seen it cited, even someone like, Jonathan Tah from Bayer Leverkusen, apparently his contract is out. This is a title-winning centre-back who's obviously done a lot of good things. It's not the only name out there, but just one that was cited to me. Not that Chelsea are in for him, just a name that was cited as like an older profile.
It's a name which Chelsea should be in for.
They're talking
about
Champions League level.
That is a
Champions League. Yeah, it's that kind of level of player. And it's not just about 30-year-olds. I think Mark Guehi is an experienced player. He has played a lot of Premier League football at this stage of his career. He has played consistently, basically week in, week out for Crystal Palace since he moved from Chelsea in 2021, just after we won the Champions League. He has played. He's going to play in an FA Cup final on Saturday. All right, he hasn't played European football, but listen, he's played for Crystal Palace. He's played at the Euros for England. And, he was cited, I think rightly, as one of England's strongest performers during that Euros. So this is not a guy that's played no high-level football, has never been under a pressurized situation, and never played against elite players before. It's a guy who's been through a lot. He's still got years to go. But I think, Mark Guehi, so it's not a simple case of 30-year-old versus a 24-year-old, and the 30-year-old is always going to be better. I'm not trying to simplify it like that. It's just, I think that Premier League level experience, senior level experience, playing week in, week out, compared to players that this ownership has gone for, who in a lot of cases, like a Nicholas Jackson, who are very raw, didn't have a lot of evidence. And I think actually based on that little evidence, has actually done pretty well, given the low experience level when he arrived. But then I think what you've seen this season is he still has very raw attributes. He still has a long way to go. He still needs seasoning, which is why you need around him more mature individuals, like players who he can learn off and take the burden off him. So across the team, across recruitment, whether you talk to me about centre-backs, central midfield, goalkeeper, striker, I'm going to say the same thing. All right, obviously there are different roles require different things in a football team. However, I think the general consensus I have from people, and just I felt, is that there needs to be a level of ready-made experience walking into this team. In some capacity. There just has to be this summer, because to me, if you just buy another crop of players who are going to take 12 to 18 months to develop, that's not going to benefit the players who need that experience around them right now to get better. Also, for those young players, it's not going to help them, because where are they going to be in 12 months? And I think in 12 months' time, you're going to be left in the same position once again, where you're going to be looking at a promising group of players with some talent. And unless you unearthed extraordinary talent who are ready-made and are one of a generation, very, very rare. Even players like Cole Palmer have had dips this year. Proof that even if you are incredible as a young player, if you don't have a great environment around you, you are going to have some dips. Naturally, every player does in their career. So that is the vital cog, and the vital, I think, distinguishing thing for me this summer. Are Chelsea going to be serious, or they're not going to be serious? And until we see them be serious, I don't blame anyone for being cynical.
No, exactly. But then this is the problem. I think you got people that are cynics and people that are using logic, but too many people are saying trust the process. What I say to those people is look at Arsenal as a great example of trusting the process. Mikel Arteta, if it wasn't for a very, very spectacular 15-20 minutes in that second half against Liverpool, there was a serious case where Arsenal could have been sucked into the top four battle when they've been second all season, when they've been looking comfortable for the vast majority of the season. And this is because he took his eye off the ball to look at the Champions League, and they're creating massive videos about, beating Real Madrid and getting everyone ready and all this sort of stuff, and then celebrating the fact that they're still unbeaten against any teams in the top six for an extended period of time. Yeah, that's not a trophy. And people are talking about trusting processes and all that sort of stuff. Arsenal spent quite a lot, maybe not as much as us, but nearly 800, 900 million building a squad, which isn't getting any closer. And that's the position I'm worried we're going to fall into. You hear a lot of, you use Wenger as an example. I've used Arteta. Let's just call it what it is. A lot of Arsenal mentality around Chelsea over the past 3 or 4 months, especially, where people have been talking about processes and all this sort of stuff. If goals aren't being hit, guess what? Stuff needs to change. And that's why Benedict Barley and Clearlake are under pressure from their investors, because Chelsea are not on track to succeed like they were supposed to, with the model that kind of works, but still needs seasoning with the correct people in the correct positions. Because you want to talk about seniority, Dan, we could talk about that not just on the pitch but off of it as well, because there's a distinct lack of it throughout the club. But look, that's something you and I have touched on for the umpteenth time this season, for the umpteenth time over the past 3 years. It's like flogging a dead horse. It's pointless. You're not going to get anywhere with it, because that's a case that was being made several times. There are other players that have been talked about. If Chelsea achieve Champions League, Rodrigo, Harry Kane, these are names that were thrown at me earlier today when I was speaking to some people about it. And names which, if Chelsea do get Champions League, go look at them. But go look at them with a real sense of trying to get them, not just looking at them to say that we have, because that is the problem which I'm seeing with Chelsea. We're looking at people to say we've done it, not actually going out to get those season players, which, by the way, as much as I dislike Enzo Maresca, as much as I know Dan is maybe less of a fan, and we have said we'd give him a lot of credit should he get Champions League football, should he win the Conference League, and he hits his targets, fair enough. If he is saying we need more experience, if Pochettino was saying we need more experience, if Lampard in his interim spell was saying this team needs more experience, if Graham Potter was saying this team needs more experience, if Thomas Tuchel was criticising the model when they arrived, it says everything that you need to know. The fact that these are people that are within football and have been within football for a long time, whether they be a seasoned manager or a manager who is just setting foot into the game. If you say that many times, it has to go in at some point. This is the window to do it. If Chelsea achieve Champions League football, this is the time to do it, to close that gap, because there is an option and an opportunity to build. But having said all that sort of stuff, we shall move on into the rest of the team. So as we said, goalkeeper, Robert Sanchez, 2 centre-backs, Trevor Chalobah, Levi Colwill. We're obviously talking about Mark Gahey, Dean Huijsen, other players coming in at centre back there as well as options. Left back, Marco Correa is a given. Right back is an interesting situation. Now, we saw in the game against Newcastle, Moises Caicedo struggled. I think dealing with that press is something which Chelsea really struggle with and will continue to struggle with, because the way that Newcastle were playing, you got to give them credit. Chelsea could not get out of their own half. In that first half, they were pressing to the umpteenth degree. And this is where I talk about the Arsenal mentality, by the way, as well, because in the second half, everyone's talking about how amazing Chelsea were playing. Didn't do anything with the ball, lads. Very Arsenal to be saying, but look how much ball possession we've had. If you don't do anything with it, it doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, Moises Caicedo was targeted. He got caught out, and you then look at the rest of the midfield as well. Romeo Lavia taking the hit for what wasn't his fault. I get that he was pressed really high and he lost the ball, but it wasn't his fault. Chelsea were down to 10 men and in the position they were, for him to basically not have the outlet which he should do. We're going to talk about that later on in the show, obviously, as well. But Dan, Reece James did not train with the Chelsea squad on Tuesday, or on Wednesday by the looks of things as well. As we record, no news about him training and being back with the squad. He's not missed any games since January. and now we're potentially looking at Reece James missing again. Malo Gusto is still uncertain as well. What does that mean for Chelsea? And given how the game expanded against Newcastle, I get that we're talking about Manchester United not being as good as they were, but Chelsea are still in a position where they need to win the game. Do you reckon he's going to stick with that formula and just see Newcastle as a bump in the road? Or do you think this might be an opportunity where maybe he should look at changing it?
I do think the instinct is to move Reece to his natural position. Apparently, it's not an injury; it might be illness is why he's missed. But if he's missing for illness, it might mean he's not ready to start at least on Friday. It is a different level of opposition. Like the performance level of Newcastle is obviously miles higher than the Man United, right? But it is something that you kind of think. Just kind of do the obvious thing. Like if you have Reece James available, put him in as right back. Caicedo, Lavia, essential midfield, and you've got Enzo Fernandez who can play further up the pitch. Chelsea can gain more dominance. I think it will be a big question for Forest, absolutely, because you look at, say, Callum Hudson-Odoi, the way he played against Chelsea. The way he played against Chelsea away from home last year, it was like a guy possessed. It was like a guy who is a point to prove, basically. I keep on saying this. I think Chelsea would be a stronger squad if we had kept Callum Hudson-Odoi. And
you and I disagree on that, though.
I know many people disagree with me on that, but like if you don't replace Callum Hudson-Odoi with a better player, or you're left in a position where left wing is still not certain, and you sell that guy for £3 million. It's the same situation I've had many times with Chelsea recruitment, stretching back to the previous ownership. If you sell academy players and then you don't replace them with more competent players, better, high quality players, I'm always going to sit there and go, it's not good enough. 3 million. I'm sorry, no one can argue with me. 3 million was acceptable.
No, you can, because 3 million, and given how long he had left in his contract, he only had a year left in his contract and was on 120 grand a week. Adds up. They just took book value. Is what it is. Like that. Realistically, the reason Callum Hudson-Odoi, I believe, is performing at Nottingham Forest, and we'll chat about that obviously during the Forest game as well. So, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The reason why I think that he's performing is because he doesn't have the pressure. And credit to him, I think he's been superb. You could say the same for Anthony Elanga. That these are two lads which were at Chelsea and Manchester United respectively, both touted as big talents. Both didn't quite hit the ceilings because pressure, different other factors, whatever, right? They've not found their feet. Callum Hudson-Odoi had several years to find his feet at Chelsea and failed to do so on multiple occasions. It just happens. I don't think he'd be any better than the options we have, to be honest. You'd be seeing the same output from the same players. That's just my opinion anyway.
Okay, that conversation for another day, but just on
absolutely.
Back to the point of Chelsea, how Chelsea deal with those threats. Yeah, I think that if Reece is available, but even then, Malo Gusto, I don't think has had a good season, has actually really regressed, unfortunately. But even like Josh Hutchinson, like why would it be a negative to see Josh play this game? Like I think because to me that's then a look ahead to next season. Because to me, Josh Hutchinson now needs to start being moved from a fringe academy player into a squad player that you can seriously look at and seriously develop. I would like to, if it was up, if Reece can't play, I'd put Josh there, a more natural right back. You put him there, and hopefully he can put on a really good performance, and then maybe you're able to play Reece James. If Reece James is ready to go, I'd start Reece James in right back and then move Caicedo into central midfield. I just think that's obvious, and then the rest of the central midfield kind of sorts itself out.
I agree. So okay, let's do it how we want to do it, because that is what the Echo 11 is. I agree. Josh, if Reece isn't available, you put Reece in there. Yeah, I agree. Caicedo, Lavia, who's been great since he's come back in fairness, again, much like Reece, worried about availability, but that's another conversation for another day. And speaking of availability, actually, we should probably, I know we kind of brushed right past it. We probably should talk about the big news coming out with Wesley Fofana. I say big news. It's news that I was saying is probably going to happen when we signed him, to be honest. Chelsea are willing to listen to sizable offers for Wesley Fofana. because of his injury record, despite the fact they really like him. What does sizable mean to you? Let's just touch on that quickly before we move on to the rest of the team. But what does sizable mean to you, and knowing the sporting directors? Because I've got a horrible feeling we're going to see an Nkunku-esque situation that we saw in January, where they're going to expect 60 million quid for a player that has barely played football for Chelsea Football Club.
Yeah, but I think that I don't think you can go below 40 for him. And I'll tell you why. I don't think you can, because I think they put, you look at the length of the contract, you look at what we paid for him. We paid about 70 million, wasn't it? And he still is a quite a young centre back. So there will always be that feeling in the back of your mind that what if he goes somewhere else? And it's not the I want to make this clear. It's not the reason you don't sell someone. That's not the point I'm making. But just in terms of, it's like when we sold Kai Havertz to Arsenal, right? Like, you want to be compensated for the fact that he's going to move to a rival and play his prime year somewhere else. Just like Mason Mount moving to a rival and playing his prime year somewhere else, in case they turn out to be wonderful players. Like, you want to be compensated for that, because you're not losing a 30-year-old who barely has any time left in his career properly and is not going to be playing at the highest level. There is also a reality that Fofana has not played a lot of football, but we have seen players move out of a certain situation and a certain environment where they've struggled with injury, move somewhere else, and then suddenly they're not injured anymore. I know people will kind of scream, like, I bring up these points a lot, but like, people say, oh, Serie A is actually not that serious. But I don't know. Like, Pulisic has barely been injured since he moved to AC Milan. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, a guy who struggled so much with his injury, has barely, also had setbacks. So people can get out of their injury problems. We hope Lavia is now getting out of his injury problems. We hope Reece can get out of his injury problems. So you can get through it. And I also just look at the talent of Fofana when he's been on the pitch, which I think the potential is sizable. But I don't know who's going to pay that. Like, whatever we pay, like, when I read that it was Matt Law, wasn't it? Right. Like, when I read that, I sort of thought, well, who's going to pay that? Who's coming close to that? Who's going to take that risk this summer? I don't think anyone is. So I don't even think it's a conversation starter. I don't think any club, is going to think to themselves, in the current era of like PSR, FFP, and also the alternative centre-back options who aren't injury prone, who aren't missing large swathes of the season through extensive injury setbacks constantly. Whether it's for under 40 million, over 40 million, what they expect, I mean, I don't think it matters personally. Like, I don't think anyone who could pay that money is coming close to signing Fofana.
No,
unless it is a loan situation. Well, unless it's like a loan situation, but an Italian club comes in for him, a French club comes in for him. Most likely, they want a situation where he goes on loan. Chelsea pay some portion of his wages, and because they don't want to take all the financial burden because they can't buy him permanently. We've seen this extensively as well. Like that. That's the issue you've got with a player like Fofana. There's not going to be someone, unlike, I'd be shocked if someone just comes to Chelsea's front door and slams down a load of money and says, we'll take him. I can't see that happening.
I can see it happening if it's Saudi. I could see him going to Saudi.
Yeah,
I really could. I think if it's either that or like, I think the AC Milan, you bring up a good point about Italy, by the way. It's the lifestyle and it's the diet. You talk about the quality of life and stuff in Italy, and look, if it made sense to me, I'd move there in a heartbeat. But financially, unfortunately, because I'm not a footballer, working in Italy is rubbish because there's no money. There's not a lot of money out there. So, it's very much a case that. But the quality of life is so much better. The quality of diet is so much better. I mean, look at Romelu Lukaku. Bloody hell. I mean, he comes back to England, he piles on the pounds, goes back to Italy. The diet's better, the lifestyle's better. He slims down. It's a situation where, Italy is a good spot to go if you are an injury-prone player, and I could see that happening. But we'll have to see what happens with that. Obviously, we said we'd touch on that briefly, but yeah, Wesley Fofana will obviously be keeping tabs on that, and the transfer show will be back, which I'm very excited to look forward to. 5 and 5 will be returning as of June. But we shall move swiftly on right now and we're going to go into some other positions and stuff to talk about. Obviously, we talk about how we're setting up the team. We're setting up in a 4-2-3-1 still, but playing Enzo Fernandez in the 10. The right-hand side, you're going to be seeing Cole Palmer, I guess, from myself and Dan. Realistically, that is going to be probably Pedro Neto if you're picking the team. Left-hand side, Noni Madueke is a no-brainer. Now, we've been going for an hour, which is kind of a little bit outside of our zone, but we only gave you half an hour preview for Newcastle. Let's talk. I think it might be a bit of an extensive chat as well about the front line. Now, Chelsea obviously have been linked with a multitude of players. Benjamin Šeško now seems to be the front runner because Chelsea look like they'll be losing out to Manchester United on Liam Delap, which is baffling to say the least, considering, again, Chelsea, lots of connections, Joe Shields being the front runners again, and are potentially about to lose out to a club which has no money, no idea how they're going to pay those wages to that player. But guess what? They're going to probably do it anyway. I mean, Dan, let's talk about the striker situation, because Nicholas Jackson now, I don't know if you heard final score, people were obviously absolutely apoplectic. He has ended his Premier League season prematurely by making a tit of himself, I think is, pretty much in no uncertain way we can say. Obviously, we touched on it in the Donk Report where he hasn't apologised to the team, which if I was in that dressing room, I'd have walked into him at Newcastle and slapped him. Well, what are you doing, idiot? What do Chelsea do? Do you see Christopher Nkunku starting? Or we talked about Cole Palmer going on the right side. Does Pedro Neto go down the middle? Is it Tyreek George? And then obviously after that, when the Premier League season ends and we've got that little magic gap between the end of the season and the Club World Cup, who do you go and sign? What do you do in that situation? Is there something which can be done to rectify it? Because in Nicholas Jackson's defence, since Diego Costa, there's only been 2 players that have scored more than 10 Premier League goals in a season for Chelsea Football Club. One of them was Tammy Abraham in 1920, and the other one was Nicholas Jackson in back-to-back seasons now. So how does it work? Where does he fit? In your eyes, what is the situation that Chelsea now take on?
So the first thing with Jackson, what he did last week was very selfish, and what he did last week was wrong. And the first point I want to make is that we all saw what happened on that pitch. We all saw a situation where a player in a big game cost Chelsea. And then I'm hearing revisions of people bringing up VAR screenshots from 2 years ago. No, let's just call a spade a spade. What he did was wrong, and he put himself in a position where he could have cost his team, and he cost his team. I'm, however, not of the belief that he should never put on a Chelsea shirt again. I'm just not of that belief, because if we're going down that road, a lot of players, in my eyes, have to start leaving the club. And Jackson, we talk about Chelsea transfer strategy. Actually, Jackson has actually been one of the successes based on the players they've recruited. And I think Expected Chelsea put out a really good thread about how we really haven't helped Jackson, because he was a young guy who I think initially under Pochettino was brought in probably not to be the main attacker. And you got to think back in context of what actually the sequence of events. Jackson comes in, I think was supposed to be either alongside Christopher Nkunku or would kind of be an understudy to Christopher Nkunku. Nkunku then gets injured, who was a massive part of Pochettino's preseason plans. Nkunku gets injured. I think Chukwuemeka was a big part of kind of his plans as well. He gets injured as well. Then we sign Cole Palmer. Cole Palmer becomes the big star for Chelsea and a big attacker. But from a central attacking role for that first season, Jackson probably plays a lot more minutes than anyone probably anticipated when he signed for the club. He becomes the main striker, and he has to do it in broad daylight. He has to do it under severe scrutiny. And actually, based on all of that, based on the severe pressure of being that player, he comes out of it looking good, because I think the way he developed as a centre forward, I think the way his game developed was really positive. This year's been a lot more challenging, I think, for a variety of reasons. Maybe because the expectation level has gone up for him based on what he did in that first season. So naturally, you think surely it should go up. He starts the season very well. He gets to 9 Premier League goals before Christmas, which is a really good return, actually. Again, context of who this guy is, his young age. But then his form, derails really. And because Chelsea don't have any alternative kind of serious striker options, that's it basically. It's not a scenario where you can turn to the bench and bring on Olivier Giroud, who maybe can take up the bulk of some minutes and will give you about 5, 6, 7 goals at a key point in the season, makes up the shortfall of Jackson as a young forward. That's what Abraham had with Giroud in his first season. That 1920 season, if people remember it, Tammy was wonderful that year in terms of, again, Cobham player, had a series of championship loans that were good, but then walks into the Premier League. Again, he takes that number 9 shirt and he does a wonderful job with it. And his return, I still think, is underrated. But he was benefited by the fact that I think he got injured, but also I think Frank then leaned very heavily on the experience of Giroud, and that helped Chelsea get through in the end. We don't have that in the current squad, and I've been calling for a Giroud type player since the summer of 23. So it's not people like to make up agendas and kind of narratives that I have agendas, right? That it's all against Maresca. Now, I was saying this when Pochettino had just barely started, that what we don't have is someone who's going to take the burden off of young attackers. And that's a consistent problem. So that's the first point. I wouldn't be selling Jackson. I'm angry with him. He cost his team and he needs to learn seriously about it. I don't think it's good that internally it's a shrug of the shoulders apparently about this incident, which again reflects. But him as an individual himself, he still has accountability. He still has responsibility to his teammates. He let them down in a key game. Now, what do you do from here? In terms of the remaining 2 Premier League games, my instinct is I think Neto will play the central role because that's what Maresca did the last time. He didn't have a centre forward there. And I think Palmer may play a little bit wider or he'll start Jadon Sancho. I think it's more likely that Jadon Sancho starts. Or, of course, you could play Tyreek George there, who's actually shown some promise playing in that role. So I think that's, at least for the rest of this season, 2 games left. I'm unsure what happens in the Conference League final. It's impossible to know. Nkunku hasn't been in training because he's had some injury problems of his own recently. It's quite clear he has no future at the club, and Maresca wasn't even favouring him to begin with. So I'd absolutely be stunned if Nkunku, because even if Nkunku does well, what's going to happen? What is it? His whole Chelsea career going to turn a 180 and suddenly he's the big guy? I can't see it. So that's for the short term. The long term, I'm a bit conflicted because, like I said with defense, there's that experience level that I'd like to see. We can talk through all the names, right? And there are pros and cons to all of them. Are you looking for more of kind of your classic finisher? Are you looking for someone who's a bit more creative? Are you looking for someone who is kind of the ready-made player, who can kind of take a lot on their shoulders? Are you looking for someone who is kind of coming into their prime years? Isn't quite there yet, but if you look at the numbers, you can sort of see, well, maybe he could develop into that. Liam Delap, I think, would have been a shrewd signing. Not in the sense that I think he would have provided that, but at the very least, I think for 30 million in the current market, based on his output, I think maybe you've got a player there that, again, could be developed, but I think improves at least gives you more options in the striker department than you currently have. He's a level above Mark Guiu, for instance, as a rotational option. However, my concern with someone like Sesko, my concern with Ekatike, my concern with most young players under the age of 25, young strikers we're talking about here, the likelihood is if Chelsea sign these players, if Chelsea sign Sesko, he's not coming in for 30 million. He is signing probably for 60 million plus. This is a guy who's been targeted for years by clubs like Arsenal and Chelsea. He's been talked about he scored 8 Champions League goals, 8 or 9 Champions League goals this year. Although he's still very young, he's younger than Jackson. He's been around for a while. His profile's been big. And I'd be Leipzig, no, they can make a buck out of Chelsea because they've done it a few times before. So he's going to come in for a big pressure and big scrutiny. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on that guy's shoulders to deliver instantly. And that's what you've got to think about. It's not just the technical part of it, it's the character part of it, it's the mentality part of it. It's you are now seen as number one, and how do you do that? Now, clearly, I've seen a lot of people want Osimhen, they want Gyökeres, and I think both of those options I understand. The problem is, like, and this makes it quite a kind of an endless kind of conversation, or just like what's my end point here, because I said it on my show yesterday that Lukaku was I still firmly believe what I felt before we signed Lukaku. He was the most logical signing you could have made that summer in terms of looking for a big name striker that team lacked. He had extensive Premier League experience. He had just led Inter Milan to a Scudetto. He had, he looked like a player who was one of the best finishers, statistically one of the best finishers in Europe. He was at an age where he had been through kind of those awkward years developing his frame, his physique, his technique, his demeanor on the pitch. He had matured into a player that seemed to have the aura about him, the leadership skills about him to walk into Chelsea, who he had historical history with, before. He'd been here before. There was kind of unfinished business. It seemed all the boxes were being ticked there. And I still firmly believe, in hindsight, everyone can turn around and go, we should have never signed him. But I think people were being disingenuous. It looked like a logical signing, and it still didn't work out. So you can have all of the boxes being ticked at once, and maybe it doesn't work out. Diego had actually not a lot of big evidence before signing him. He had developed at Atletico. If you looked at his career, he'd been on loan from Atletico. He'd gone from kind of battling with Falcao to then suddenly becoming the main striker for Simeone when they won that unexpectedly title in 2014. And even people, when we signed Diego, didn't feel he was the right option because they felt, well, there wasn't enough evidence. I remember reading articles about this at the time, that he wasn't, there wasn't actually that much evidence about him. He hadn't played top level football for that long. There was obviously the character kind of demeanor, aggression flaw. How's that going to work in the Premier League? Is he going to get himself sent off all the time? What I come back to, maybe this seems like a simple kind of conclusion, is that you get a lot of people online, especially, that want to tell you, and I've been guilty of this in the past with Lukaku, this is the guy, this is the one we need to get. If we don't get this guy, it ain't going to work out. It's not as simple as that. All I can say currently is Chelsea cannot walk out of another transfer window not strengthening in centre forward. What I would like to see, if you can find this player, is someone who is ready-made. And what I mean by that is someone who is going to elevate the current group, is going to take a lot of burden off of the players around them. Now, that burden can come from a younger forward who just shares the responsibility with Nicholas Jackson, or it's kind of your big superstar or a player that comes in and kind of takes the mantle as that big guy. But it's one you've got to get right. I think you have to manage it right, because if you don't, either you've splashed a load of money again on a striker that hasn't worked out, or you leave once again us short in a key area. And people have not been patient about it already. They're sick and tired of seeing us spend all this money and not address centre forward. So the conclusion for me is it's a difficult one, but I don't think it's one you're going to have to make a decision this summer. But I don't have much faith that the sporting directors know what the right choice is. And I'm not saying I know what the right choice is.
No, and I think that's the thing, like the lack of the striker you're talking about. 3 of them exist. Two, actually, no, 2 or 3. I'd say Gyökeres, Harry Kane, a push, Victor Osimhen, but we saw how that ended last summer, and I don't particularly want to go down that road again. And also, as a player, he doesn't really fit Maresca's system at all. No, he's somebody who doesn't really link up the play. He's I will stand in the box and I will score you goals. So, is Maresca going to adapt his system, or is the team going to adapt around him?
No. What I want to, but what I would say is we crossed the ball a lot in Maresca's system. We crossed the ball. We spam crosses stupidly to a striker that isn't aerially good. That is Jackson's biggest flaw. So I kind of look at it and go, well, yeah, if you buy that centre forward, then there is some logic behind it. And I do think, based on, you got to factor in who we were linked with last summer, Samuel Amarodi and John Duran. I think Maresca he wants a more physically imposing centre forward. I think that's what he probably wants in his system. So I'm not saying there wouldn't be a problem with signing someone who maybe isn't as good as link-up play. I'm not saying there aren't any pitfalls to that. However, based on what I've seen, the way we fall short of, especially against more physically imposing defenses, and we still kind of spam crosses as we were against Newcastle last week, you kind of do wonder, if someone was better in the air in that environment, how much better our end product could be.
Absolutely. And on that, by the way, just because obviously we're talking about strikers, a big benefit of us working in the place that we do is that you get news coming to you quickly, and there's some big things coming through here. So, according to Cy Phillips, obviously friend of the pod, Chelsea are interested. Harry Kane, Alexander Isak is another name that's put on the list as well. Eberechi Eze, Morgan Rogers. So Eze maybe not so much fitting the physicality, but Harry Kane definitely does. Doubt he'd do it. Morgan Rogers can play in that forward role, more of a 10, more of a winger, but again, quite physically imposing. So physicality is something which is clearly something which they're looking at for the team as well. But yeah, I mean, look, finding that name, getting those players, we'll obviously keep tapping it as things develop and obviously keep you in the loop with transfer news. But we should probably wrap there because we're going to have a half an hour longer than we normally do. But you've got a nice long pod to listen to on your commute and obviously at your desk, maybe. Who knows where you listen to it? Obviously, drop us a note. Let us know on Twitter. Drop us a DM. Where do you listen to the Chelsea Echo or watch it? So let us know, obviously, on all good social media platforms. If you have enjoyed the pod, please give us a 5-star review. It really does help the Chelsea Echo out on all platforms as well. Big thank you if you're listening to us on Spotify, if you listen to us on Apple, wherever you listen and get your podcasts. Of course, make sure you follow Dan on his socials, follow me on mine as well. And yeah, we will see you for the next one. Take care, guys.